Good evening, liveweatherblogs.com meteorologist Bob here for you with a overnight Hurricane Earl update here for Tuesday, August 31st, 2010. Hurricane Earl today has maintained its Category 4 status all day, really not much change in strength. Latest pressure we have is 940 millibars. We have maximum sustained winds at 135. This was as of 8 p.m. And movement is to the northwest at 14. Really not much changes since my morning update today. We've seen Earl about the same strength, and we've seen the models not really change much. Maybe, especially after 72 hours, once it passes North Carolina, a slight shift east in the models. And again, that's that speed of Earl. I think we've seen the GFS kind of slowed down Earl just a little bit in this 24 to 48 hour portion here as it reaches North Carolina, and that could give it a better push east here as it bounces off North Carolina. It could give it a little farther push east here, and that again could be great news here from points from Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, and then up towards southeastern New England here, especially eastern Long Island, Rhode Island, and the Cape area here, and then Maine. Good news if this stays farther east. Really, really good news, and that could take them totally out of any kind of hurricane force winds, and great news. Can't say the same for North Carolina. Again, this is going to come very close to the Outer Banks. Right now I'm banking that it stays just offshore. We have hurricane force winds extending right now 90 miles from the center. Tropical storm force winds 200 miles. The western side's always a little weaker, so if this system gets within 100 miles of the North Carolina Outer Banks, then we could see some hurricane force winds skirting the Cape Hatteras area in the Outer Banks. Anything closer, of course, would bring those winds in a little closer. I'm still thinking this might be right around that 100-mile marker there, so it's going to be pretty close whether they get some hurricane force winds or not. Definitely tropical storm force winds will overspread the eastern North Carolina area here. We have hurricane watches now out for the North Carolina coast from north of Surf City north to the North Carolina-Virginia border. And then we have a tropical storm watch from Cape Fear to Surf City here in the southern portion of North Carolina. Will we see these warnings or watches extended? I'd say we probably will see possibly a tropical storm watch extended north here, maybe along Virginia, and then Maryland, Delaware coast, possibly even Jersey Shore. I mean, we might even see this all the way up to here. Might see a tropical storm watch. I don't expect we'll see hurricane watches up in this area. Again, we'll have to see by tomorrow if what's going to be there, but I expect we'll probably see some tropical storm watches go up farther north along the coast. For points north of North Carolina, again, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, a big coastal event, which means some coastal flooding, especially times of high tide, rough seas, and that sort of thing. Hurricane force winds should stay well offshore for you guys. We could see some tropical storm force winds right along the coast. And then again, the impacts along the Cape, they might be a little closer to the core of the hurricane. Again, I suspect we'll see hurricane force winds stay offshore there, but they could be in store for a little stronger tropical storm force winds there. Eventually, where the landfall could be eventually, especially if we don't see landfall across North Carolina, we might see this make landfall in Nova Scotia. As far as the categories go, I would expect we'll see this Category 4 system maintain itself for the next 24 to 48 hours. I don't see much real big weakening or real big strengthening in the next 24 to 48 hours. Probably say status quo. Might try to strengthen a little bit in the next 24 hours. Looks like high pressure is trying to build back over the system, so we might see a little push, might get a little stronger, and then kind of stay status quo, and then slight weakening as it gets closer to North Carolina. I suspect as it passes near or just to the east of Cape Hatteras, we should see a Category 3 system. As it passes east of Jersey and Long Island, we should see Category 2. And then eventually, if it makes landfall across Nova Scotia, it should be a Category 1 system going into extratropical transition there. So That's my categories 2 right now. But again, I concur with the National Hurricane Center track. Might come a little farther west here, but I expect it stays about 100 miles offshore of Hatteras. And then I'm right along this line basically, and this might even go a little farther east here, where we might see something like this. So again, good news for points New Jersey and the New England area right now. Again, this could just be a right along the coast event with some coastal flooding and of course beach erosion and strong surf and such like that. For the southeast here, probably going to see the best surfing in a long time. This could be classic conditions here along South Carolina, Georgia, Florida coast, especially Florida on Thursday as we get a little offshore wind and with some great seas here. This could be classic surfing. So for you experienced surfers, get your boards out and get ready to go. Okay, so here we go. This is Earl tonight, and you can see it's kind of shrunk a little bit, not as big as it was. It looks like it's trying to get its core back here. It looks like the eye wall's been open to the south a little bit, and a lot of times, especially when these systems pass north of the Hispaniola here, we sometimes even get some dry air coming off Hispaniola here in the Dominican Republic, and I think that's what happened too as well today, and I kind of shrunk this system down just a little bit. But if we look at the water vapor loop here, we could see high pressure starting. You see this right in here? Looks like high pressure's coming back. So maybe as it gets into this area tomorrow, we could see slight strengthening again. We'll have to see. It looks like some of this dry air has kind of mixed down, and like I said, sometimes we get some dry air building off of the Dominican Republic when systems pass to the north. So I think that's what happened today. Kind of just kept it steady. Still a powerful Category 4 hurricane. Nothing to slouch about here. But again, we might see this kind of pick up in a little strength right in here. And then as it moves north, we'll start getting a little more southwesterly shear. And water temperatures cool just slightly here. But I think we should see a Category 3 system all the way up to North Carolina. And then eventually Category 2 as the ocean waters get slightly cooler, and we'll start getting more southwesterly shear here. So from 2 all the way to 1 at a possible landfall in Nova Scotia. Good news is you see this upper trough here quickly moving away. And that's actually good news if we want to see this stay farther off the coast. Because that has a lot to do with as this trough moving and high pressure moving out of the way, as long as this is moving out quickly now. That's why I'm thinking this is going to stay east of Hatteras. Again, could brush them with some tropical storm, hurricane force winds. It could stay close enough for that. But then I don't think our effects here across New England and especially Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, Virginia might not be as bad as we think. So that could be good news. Mimic here, and you can see that was that eye wall replacement cycle last night, early this morning. Kind of steadied it. Then we saw the bigger eye wall here start to develop, but we still seen it. Those last few views, you saw the south part of the eye wall kind of not together yet. And that was some of this dry air coming into it. And here's that shear. A little bit of southwesterly shear today, but we could have high pressure building back in this area in the next day or two. So, again, don't expect Earl to fall apart anytime soon. Latest model runs, 18Z early runs. Pretty much status quo here. Just off the Hatteras coast and then into Nova Scotia. These haven't changed much all day. Probably the last 24 to 48 hours really haven't changed much here. I mean, they shifted a little farther west, but actually the last 12 to 24 hours we stayed pretty much the same. Intensity, and here we go. Like I said, Category 4. As it gets closer to Hatteras here in 72 hours, Category 3, and then 2, and then 1. And then landfall closer to Nova Scotia eventually there in the end. Again, models, the only model bringing it farther west now is the no gaps. This line here, discount this model. This model has run very poorly all season. I don't even pay attention to it. The rest of the models are pretty tightly clustered now just off the Hatteras coast by about 100 miles. And then you can see this bend has gotten bigger. It's not that nice slight bend we had like this. We got a more bounce now, this way and then out. So that could be good news for this area right in here. And I concur with this right now. I don't see any change in this. I've seen this, you know, this nice slower motion here. It's not really speeding up. And this could really kick it out a little further, which would be good news for the Northeast. GFDL, here we go. Again, shifted slightly east today. Not much. Still about the same, keeping Earl offshore, and then again, Nova Scotia eventual landfall. GFS Friday morning, and I really concur with this. And you can see this would bring the Outer Banks, some of the outer western eye wall here, brushing along the Outer Banks. And then we'll move up to Friday night here, passing well east of Jersey. Again, maybe some tropical storm force winds right along the coast here. And then tropical storm force winds eastern Long Island. And then we'll move here. And this is valid for Saturday morning. Again, passing east of the Cape. I'll give my percentages here in a minute, but hurricane force winds might stay east of the Cape. And then eventually we have landfall in Nova Scotia here as a Category 1 hurricane. Euro, about the same thing as the GFS. You can see it right here as we run it through, and then eventually Nova Scotia. Wave product here, and like I said, here's those great waves that we're going to see here. 7 to 8 footers. And then as we move this along, you can see 8, 9, 10 foot, 12 foot seas near the Outer Banks. And as this moves, you can see for Jersey, and then this is valid for the for Friday here. You could see possible 5, 6, 7 foot seas building along the coast here, and then eventually near the Cape, big seas, and then there it goes. My percentages right now. Let's see. We have Cape Hatteras, 70% chance of tropical storm force winds. Hurricane force winds, I give 20% for them. They're my highest percentages. Then as we move up the coast, we have Norfolk, Virginia, 30% chance of tropical storm force winds. Ocean City, Maryland, 20%. I give Cape Cod 30% chance of tropical storm force winds and about 5% on hurricane. I still think the core is going to be far enough east where they don't really get into hurricane force winds. Big cities, Boston, 20% chance of tropical storm force winds. And in New York City, we're right around 10% there on the tropical storm force winds. So that'll do it for tonight. I will have another update tomorrow morning, and then at that time I'll take a look at the rest of the tropics too tomorrow morning. Have a good night.